Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer. Over the last few years, we've witnessed an absolute revolution on our city streets. I mean, electric micromobility has gone from this niche, eco-friendly alternative to a totally dominant force in our daily transit. But what happens when that explosive innovation outpaces our infrastructure, our safety standards, and our laws? Today, we're unpacking the source data to understand a massive, high-speed crisis that's literally rolling into our bike lanes right now.
I want to start by hooking you with a statistic that should immediately make you sit up and take notice. 96. According to recent data, 96 fat bike riders ended up in the emergency room with serious injuries in just a single week in the Netherlands. And remember, the Netherlands is globally recognized as the gold standard for cycling safety. So to figure out how a simple bicycle variant triggered a public health alarm of this magnitude, we've got to look at the core confusion plaguing our bike lanes today, which is understanding the actual difference between the various electric bikes on the market. So let's start by clearly defining the ride and looking at standard e-bikes versus fat bikes. We really need to look at the exact legal and technical boundaries across three distinct categories here. First up, we have the normal e-bike. This has a 250-watt motor, it's capped at 25 kilometers per hour, and it strictly requires you to pedal to get that motor assistance. Simple enough, right? Then you have the speed pedelec. This is a much more powerful machine at 500 watts or more, hitting speeds of 45 kilometers per hour. Because of that crazy speed, the law steps in. You need a license, a helmet, and insurance. It's essentially a moped. But then look at the third category, the fat bike. Legally speaking, it sits right in that first category. 250 watts, 25 kilometers per hour. But visually, structurally, it features thick tires, an oversized frame, and a long, low saddle. It's built exactly like a moped, yet it successfully hides within the legal framework of a normal, harmless bicycle. And this loophole brings us directly to the hidden danger on our streets. Which brings us to the reality of modifications. Essentially, the Trojan horse of this whole crisis. See, while a fat bike might look like a fun, trendy cruiser, what's happening under the hood is transforming it into an unregulated motorcycle. The root of the problem here is e-bike tuning. Basically, this is the illegal use of software hacks, aftermarket chips, or hidden throttles to completely bypass the factory speed limiters. Users are easily modifying these really heavy fat bikes to reach speeds of over 45 kilometers per hour. And they're doing it without even having to pedal. You literally just twist a throttle and go. Now, when you combine those unregulated moped speeds with the fact that these require absolutely no license, the results are catastrophic for vulnerable riders. Data from the safety organization Fatbikes NL reveals a truly shocking reality. 40% of fat bike brain trauma victims are younger than 14 years old. Let that sink in. We are literally putting middle schoolers on unregistered motorcycles right in the bike lane. It's absolutely crucial to understand exactly why these specific tuned bikes fail so violently at high speeds. First of all, the brakes are engineered to stop a bicycle going 25 kilometers per hour, not a heavy vehicle rocketing along at 45. Second, you're dealing with incredibly heavy frames, often ranging from 35 to over 60 pounds, which just totally multiplies the kinetic energy upon impact. Combine that massive weight with the unpredictable acceleration of cheap rear hub motors, plus tires that were literally never rated for high-speed stress, and you have an absolute engineering recipe for disaster. And these highly dangerous bikes aren't just magically appearing out of nowhere either. They are flooding in. That takes us straight into the black market and how these imports are evading standards altogether. The source material traces this incredible smuggling route being used by importers right now to bring in dangerously cheap, unregulated inventory. It's wild. Step 1. Unbranded Chinese fat bikes are shipped to European ports in containers, falsely manifested as furniture or televisions, because, nothing looks quite like a flat-screen TV like a 60-pound fat bike. Step 2. This falsification allows them to completely evade the European Union's sky-high anti-dumping duties, which can be up to 83% at major entry points like the Port of Rotterdam. Step 3. They're funneled into warehouses and sold entirely anonymously on online marketplaces for as little as €599. Now, those economics just do not make sense if you're building a safe vehicle. Niels Willems, the director of the legitimate fat bike manufacturer BR, breaks this down perfectly. He points out that if you sell a fat bike for that cheap and deduct the standard import duties, VAT, and minimum profit margins, the bike must have been built for around $110. As he says, that is impossible, even in China where they produce very competitively. It proves that massive life-threatening corners are being cut on safety and build quality just to hit those black market prices. And the mechanical failures of these cheap imports, well, that's only half the story. We also need to talk about thermal runaway, which is a massive fire threat.
There's a very specific, catastrophic danger lurking right between the rider's knees. Let's map out the battery safety standards to understand this. Legitimate e-bikes strive for UL 2849 certification. That's the absolute gold standard because it tests the entire electrical system, the battery, the motor, and the charger working together. A step down is UL 2271, which tests just the battery pack for safety against things like overcharging or crushing. But the smuggled €599 imports, they are completely uncertified. They often lack even a basic battery management system, meaning there's zero active thermal protection. And the results of using those cheap, uncertified cells are absolutely devastating. Data from the UK government shows that a staggering 91% of e-bike fires are caused directly by battery or generator failure. When an uncertified lithium-ion cell overheats, it triggers a chain reaction called thermal runaway. It's a rapid, explosive fire that cannot easily be put out, and it's happening in city apartments and garages at an alarming rate precisely because of these cheap imports. So with public outrage growing over both the high-speed crashes and these crazy battery fires, lawmakers are finally stepping in.
But that brings up the manufacturer's dilemma and the resulting industry pushback. See, legitimate e-bike makers are suddenly finding themselves caught in the crossfire of this safety crisis. Governments, particularly in the Netherlands, are rushing to draft legislation that singles out fatbikes, proposing strict age limits of 14 or 16 and mandatory helmet laws exclusively for this specific style of bike. But we have to ask the critical question based on the source data. Will banning or heavily restricting just fatbikes actually solve the crisis? The short answer seems to be a hard no, because the market is already adapting way faster than the ink can dry on the legislation. Meet the skinny bike workaround. Because lawmakers are trying to legally define a fatbike by its physical characteristics, like tire width and saddle length, manufacturers are simply designing bikes with slightly thinner tires and adjustable, standard-looking saddles. They're engineering vehicles specifically to evade fatbike laws while keeping the exact same high-speed moped-style appeal. So the crucial point is this warning from industry expert Niels Willems of BRKR. He hits the nail on the head, pointing out that if you enforce an age limit or a helmet law only on fat bikes, you simply shift the problem. As he notes, all electric bikes can be tuned up and can then be dangerous for children. Banning a specific tire shape completely ignores the real issue, which is the pervasive tuning culture and software hacking that threatens the entire e-bike ecosystem, regardless of how fat the tires are, which definitely begs the question of how we actually fix this based on the analysis of these sources. Let's get into the key takeaways for regulating the future of micromobility. The data shows us a very clear path forward, and it requires moving away from these superficial visual classifications. First, we need on-the-street technical validation. That means police using mobile roller banks to actually measure the motor output of bikes in real time to catch illegal tuning. Second, we've got to choke off the black market by strictly enforcing those UL 2849 battery certifications directly at European and American ports. And finally, we need harmonized global safety standards that heavily penalize the tuning culture itself, targeting the manufacturers of the hacking chips and the sellers of illegal throttles. We are standing at a major crossroads in urban transit right now. E-bikes hold this incredible promise for green, efficient travel, but obviously only if we can ride them safely, which leaves us with this final provocative thought to consider. As long as it only takes a cheap software hack to turn a simple bicycle into a motorcycle, can legislation ever truly catch up to the speed of micromobility innovation? It's a balance our cities must urgently figure out. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep asking the right questions.